In ReactJS, we have a way to dynamically handle the data with the help of states. So what is a state? It's an object that holds dynamic data and determines how a component behaves and renders, and it stores information that can change over time, like user input, component interaction, or API data. States can be managed both with the help of function as well as class components. In this video, we will be implementing states with the help of class components. So let's create a component with the name class state.js. Let's start writing the code. Import react component from React library. And since it's a class component, so we will be creating class with name class state extends the component. Now we are required to create a constructor so that we can initialize the object automatically. Inside this, we need to use the super keyword so that this class is able to inherit the properties of the component. Now, in order to create the object, we use the state. But since we are using the class component, we will be using this keyword, this.state. Now we are supposed to create an object. Let's say I'm taking an object and property name is chapter. The chapter name is states in React. Then we have another property called book. So I'll take it as ReactJS Essentials. So that's the name of our book. Right. Now after this, we need to render some JSX. Inside this, use return statement. Let's use an h1 tag, and let's say I'm printing a line. I am learning states in React from ReactJS Essentials. Now how to access this? How to access the chapter? For accessing, we'll be using the curly braces within which we need to write this.state. For accessing the property, we will use chapter. From curly braces, this.state book. Now we are printing this line. Now what's our next motive? We need to change the name of the book. Chapter will remain as such, but the name of the book will change. Let's create a button within which we'll be using click to change book. This will be the name of our button. And let's use an on-click event where we will be calling the function that will change the name of the book. Now, since we are using multiple elements here, so we will be now required to use the fragments. So let's use the fragment. And we will take all these bunch of tags inside the fragments. Now after this, we need to create a function that will change the name of the book. So let's say I'm taking the name as change book. Now within this, we need to change the state. So the state right now says that the name of the book is ReactJS Essentials. But now we are going to change this using this dot set state function. Set state function accepts a parameter where we will pass the object. The object will contain the property that is required to be changed. So we will change the book name to, let's say, mastering React. And now we are going to use this function here, that is change book. Let's now render our component in app.js. Import class state from /components/class state. We will render it here, class state. Alright, so we haven't yet exported. We are now going to export the default functionality of class. Export default class state. Let's get back to the browser. So we are able to see I am learning states in React from ReactJS Essentials. We are now required to change the state of the book. So this data will be changed once we click on the submit button. Means on this, click to change book. So when you click on this, you see that cannot read properties of undefined. Reading set state. Now why this error occurs? It's because whenever we are creating a function that is supposed to be called here, it should always be an arrow function. It has to be an arrow function. And now when you go back to the browser, you click to change book. It's now changed. I am learning states in React from mastering React. But anyhow, still if you want to use the traditional function, then in that case, you will be required to pass a reference to this function. So you will be using the complete reference using an arrow function to this change book function. So now get back to the browser. Click on the button, you see you are able to see the same result. Now why does this happen? Because the instance that you are having might not be actually bound with your event. So whenever you are simply using this .change book with a traditional function, it is actually not bound. Your event is actually not bound with the class instance. So in order to make sure that it is bound with the class instance, we are required to use this syntax. We are required to use the reference to the function. Or else you can use the arrow function. Alright, so it's now the time for a visual implementation question where you are asked to create two buttons and you have a count. So basically it's a counter example. So when you click on the increment button, it keeps incrementing. When you click on the decrement button, it keeps decrementing, but at a certain point, that is at 0, it is going to stop and it won't decrement it further. So let's try out this interesting example with the help of states using the class components. Let's comment our previous code and we are now freshly going to write down the code for this counter example. So this is our visual implementation question for this video. Import React from React. Also we need to import the component. Class state extends component So now this time we'll be creating a state object within which we'll be considering count as the property. So let's use a constructor. Constructor, use the super keyword, and then you have your state object. This dot state equals to, use the count property. The initial value we will take as 0. Now after this we need to render our JSX. Render return. So first of all we are required to show the value of the count. So the value of the count can be shown with the help of an h1 tag, count, and fetch the current value. Current value can be fetched using this dot state dot count. Next we'll be having two buttons, one for increment, second one for decrement. So let's write increment and decrement. Use the onClick function, onClick event. Let's use the fragments or the div tag because we are having more than one element. So let's take all the elements inside this wrapper. Now we are required to create these functions that are supposed to be called here. So let's write down the function. This time we'll be creating the arrow functions because now we know their importance. So increment, use this dot set state. We have to change the state now after the click of the button. When the button is clicked, so this will accept the parameter as the property that is supposed to be changed, and that is count. Access its current value, that is this dot state dot count. We are required to increment, so write +1. In the same way we'll be creating a decrement function and change this to -1. And finally you can now export your function, export your class, export the default functionality of your class, that is class state. Also use your functions here. On the click of the first button, use this dot increment, and on the click of the second button, use this dot decrement. So let's have a look on the browser. Let's reload. We increment, it keeps incrementing. We decrement, it keeps decrementing. But as you can see, it is decrementing below 0. So we need to avoid this. So let's put up a very simple condition. If this dot state dot count is greater than 0. So let's check out increment. So it is not decrementing below 0 because of the condition. Hope you enjoyed this video. In this video, we only learned about how to manage the dynamic data using class component. In the next video, we will learn how to do the same using the function component.